Legend Quest, another show that I found on Netflix whilst binging on Troll Hunters. Now, I didn't really know anything about this, I'd never heard of it or anything, and I tried to do some research, and I should mention that this show was very hard to research, because not only does it have kind of a generic sounding title, but it turns out there was already a show called Legend Quest. It's one of those pseudo reality show documentary type of things, and it was on the Syfy channel. Until the day they restore that logo to what it should look like, I will always refer to it as the Syfy channel. But eventually I did dig up some information on it, and it turns out it's a show from Mexico, and it's based off of a series of animated movies that, again, I had never heard of. Although recently I did see one of those movies at the store, so I guess maybe they're finally starting to release them here. So the show's about a boy named Leo who lives in a small Mexican village, and he can see ghosts. And he befriends a couple of them, and they help him out with stuff. Huh. I always wanted to know what the kids' version of the Frighteners would be like. The ghosts are Don Andres, who is a Spanish conquistador who's kind of a coward, but very well-meaning. And Theodora, who's a modern girl, which raised all kinds of questions, but I'll get to that in a minute. There's also Alebrije, who is some kind of piñata monster, I think. I'm not really sure. All I know is that he has the power to be seen as different animals to different people, but Leo always sees him as this. It's a plot point that's not really brought up much in the show. I don't really understand it. Then again, he really doesn't have much of an explanation. He's just kind of there. Now, I do have to give this show credit. Upon looking at this character, I immediately said, oh good, he's the annoying comic relief sidekick, which he kind of is, but he's very, very downplayed. A lot of the goofy stuff doesn't come up much. In fact, he's very helpful, and it did get to the point where when bad things happened to him, I genuinely felt bad. So, kudos to the show for subverting that trope. But then the deity Quetzalcoatl gets resurrected, and he takes over the town and is threatening to destroy the world, so Leo and his friends have to travel the world to try and figure out how to stop him. So I really like the premise of the show, and while looking it up, I noticed a lot of people were comparing it to Gravity Falls. And no, not quite. It's very different from Gravity Falls. You see, with Gravity Falls, they had a big mystery element, and we didn't really know a whole lot about what's going on. Things were kind of fed to the viewer very slowly and very subtly in some cases, and we didn't really know who the big bad of the series was going to be until much, much later on in Season 1. But with this show, we pretty much know what's going on. There are a few things that they reveal little by little, but it's certainly not anything like Gravity Falls. Honestly, if I was to compare this to another show, believe it or not, I got kind of a Mighty Max vibe out of it. For those of you familiar with Mighty Max, it was a show from the 90s. Look it up. But essentially, both shows are about a boy who is a chosen one who's supposed to defeat a great evil, so he travels the world with a bunch of weird characters, and he helps people and fights off other bizarre creatures from other different cultures. Meanwhile, he's trying to figure out how to stop the bad guy. Now, as great as the premise of this show is, it does have a few glaring issues. For one, the animation. It's very cheap. It does remind me of a lot of those shows that you'd see come out of Canada that maybe Cartoon Network would show for a while and then make them go away. And it does work against the show because it's supposed to show off all these creepy things and all this weird stuff going on. Unfortunately, the animation does not lend itself to the theme of the show because everything just seems so flat and uninteresting. Also, the voice acting is less than stellar. Certainly not the worst I've ever heard, that's for sure. In fact, it's far from some of the worst I've heard. But when I looked up a lot of the voice actors, I could barely find anything else they've been in. Most of them, in fact, almost all of them were unknown, so it's safe to say they were all amateurs. I think there was only one guy Paul T, I believe his name. He's the voice of Alabrije. He's the only one that seemed to have been in anything, and none of it has really been anything huge. I mean, he was in Dead Rising 3 as one of the characters, but that's about it. Also, there's one thing I should bring up, and without giving away too much, the very last scene in the very last episode takes something from a movie. And it's one of those situations where I can't tell if it's an homage or if they just straight up ripped it off. But the show did do a lot of things right. It had a really good premise, a really good story. I like that they traveled the world and gone to all these different places and fought all these crazy monsters and learned about different cultures and different creatures of different cultures. And I thought that was kind of interesting. Also, I like the characters. They were all very likable. And I should mention Theodora. Now, I mentioned before that she is a modern girl, and that threw me off because I thought that maybe it was just, you know, they were going to these small towns, like Leo lived in this small Mexican village, and she's just like some girl from a big city in America or something. But in episode 2, they actually go to America, and it's colonial time, so this takes place way far in the past. So the question was brought up, why is there a ghost of a modern girl in this distant past time? And there is an explanation for it. I will give you that right now. There is an explanation for it. I will not give it away, but it is kinda sorta revealed early on, and I feel like it's something that they really could have kept off for a while. Like, they could have kept it from us for a little while longer, and all it really required was her not saying a few lines in one of the episodes, and that's when you can kind of piece it together. Although it does still leave you with a lot of questions, but they do explain it, so at least they gave us that. And I will say she is probably the most interesting of the characters in the show. And I will admit the show gave me a few laughs. There were a lot of funny jokes in it, and there's always this running gag in the show where the ghosts keep forgetting that they're ghosts. So they're always afraid of dying and stuff. And I'm like, you're a ghost. What are you doing? There was even a scene where these villagers captured Leo and they had him tied to a stake. And there were stakes next to him, and the other ghosts had their hands behind their backs like they were tied up. And he looked over and goes, "What are you guys doing? You're ghosts." And they're like, "Oh, right." Also, the finale was really good. And again, without giving away too much, I thought the way they inevitably defeated Quetzalcoatl was actually pretty clever. So the question remains, do I recommend this show? And I'll be honest, I'm actually kind of torn on this one. It did so many things well, but all of its glaring faults held it back. And I feel like that's going to ruin the show for a lot of people, especially, you know, stuff like the animation and the voice acting. In fact, I actually tried to show the show to a friend, and unfortunately she couldn't get past episode 1 because she didn't like the voice acting. And I think a lot of people are going to have that same reaction to it. It tries so hard, and it's just so clumsy. I think that's the best word I can describe it. Clumsy. Like, there's so many good things about it, but so many things just keep it from being great. I was at least invested enough to finish it, and it is a very short series. It's only 13 episodes. But I'd say if you're going to pick between this and Trollhunters, definitely go with Trollhunters. But if you are curious about this show, I'd say give it an episode or two, try it out, see if you like it, and if you're the kind of person that can look past a lot of faults to see the good stuff, then maybe you'll get some enjoyment out of it. But if they are going to do more with this show, I definitely hope they improve upon it, because it does have a lot of potential. But for now, that's just where I'm going to leave it. So that's all I got for Legend Quest. Leave a comment below and let me know what you thought of it. My name is Rob, and have a wonderful day.